somehow. Hello. Are we back? Are we recording?
Yeah.
Thanks to Tatiana and her camera and her patience and her ability to make me feel like I'm having a session more than anything. I also want to mention that she's so good herself as an interviewer that if you really get in it before you know it, you're getting what is called a session. Anyway, I wanted to end off just by telling you some of the things that led to my ultimately finding Dianetics and getting a lot of help from it. I was going to a school in Florida called the University of Miami. The year about 1949, 1950, and I was taking school pretty lightheartedly. I wasn't thinking. It was just a good escape. I liked winter in Florida rather than winter in frozen Michigan, and I liked seeing people who weren't all wearing fur coats, and it was very nice. You go swimming in January. You didn't have to break holes in the ice and jump in like you would in Michigan. So anyway, I was doing so-so, maybe getting B's now and then. But anyway, I needed an elective, some course that was one of those ones where, blah. So I forgot. There was a course in the English department called General Semantics. 2 credits. I thought, great. I'll take it. I took it. So I cut the course as many times as I could. I didn't go to hardly any meetings, and I sometimes would listen to the instructor and sometimes take notes. And finally, we're approaching that period where you're going to have a final that will determine your grade in the course. And my teacher called me up and said, "Phil, you haven't come to course very much, and you haven't done much of anything, and I have to tell you that you'll be lucky to get a D in this course." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I'm awfully sorry, but you just haven't done much of anything." I said, "Is there anything I can do to change that D to a B or an A?" And he said, "Yes, there is. There's a book written by the founder of General Semantics. The founder's name is Alfred Korzybski. He was actually of royal blood, and his name Count Alfred Korzybski. And he invented this subject called General Semantics sometime around World War I, when he was trying to help people who had become shell-shocked or so goofed up from the war, just being in the trenches and seeing all the death and destruction and horror of World War I, that they became mentally wrecked. And Korzybski was trying to find a way to help these people. And the way he found, he incorporated into a book in 1937 called General Semantics. Very thick book. And it gives the whole history, what it is, and how it can be used. And if you will read the book and write a term paper of not less than 50 pages, if you really get it, I'll give you a B or an A. So I started reading the book, and I got very excited by it, because it talked about how people that have been shocked a lot are usually living not in the present moment. They are out of present time. How interesting. I wonder if that's me. Another thing, he said, a lot of times you get information that when you see the actual thing, the information isn't anything like the real thing. So it's like as though the map, you got this map, and you think the map, but when you actually are driving along, the map does not fit the territory. You think you're driving from Chicago to Detroit, and you end up in New York, because the map is goofy. And most people have maps in their heads and information that doesn't actually fit the real world. And if you can get them to see the difference between the map and the actual territory, I see now I'm operating off a map that doesn't go where it's supposed to. They can then make real maps of the real world of life for themselves, and they'll be much saner than most people. And he went on and on like that, pointing out thing after thing and how you can use it to help another person. Well, at that time, I was majoring in philosophy. I thought, I'll become a teacher of philosophy. Great. By the time I finished reading General Semantics, I realized how much of philosophy is not just maps that don't fit territory, it's maps that have no territory, just words. Words about words. And realities that have no reality. So forth. So, make a long story short, I did understand general semantics. I did write a paper of about 75 pages. I did get a B+ or an A in the course. And at that time, I thought, with the help of general semantics, I'm going to really be a much wiser and healthier and saner person. And true is the word, because within a few months, I got introduced to Dianetics and discovered that Alfred Korzybski was one of L. Ron Hubbard's heroes, and that some of Alfred Korzybski's ideas were incorporated into the earliest conception of Dianetics, and underlay quite a bit of Ron's thinking and so forth. And back in the good old days, when Ron was still attributing source to the shoulders of the many great people that went before him, he gave Alfred Korzybski highest of high marks. So one of the beautiful things that came out of general semantics and L. Ron Hubbard was, when you're reading Dianetics or you're studying Scientology or whatever, you mustn't accept everything and anything you read without question. You must satisfy yourself that the thing that's being talked about actually exists, and what I'm saying about it actually happens. Don't just accept things until you have satisfied yourself that they're true for you. And if you can't do that, don't embrace them. So the early L. Ron Hubbard, and of course Korzybski, were very big on this idea, which is unlike schools, where you accept tons of information without verification. You accept tons of information from your parents, from schools, from doctors, from books, from radio, television, movies, tons of information that you're supposed to believe is true and correct and may not be. How much of it can you check out? You better check out the stuff that's important to your life, your livingness, and your intelligence. Otherwise, you're liable to end up as a stupid idiot, a bigot, a racist, or worse. If you don't find out for yourself the truth about people, politics, your own government, and all these things, which is what you're supposed to do if you're going to be a citizen of a group or a country, you have to know what's really true and not take anything from anybody, even if it says this came straight from God, or this came from the church, or this came from L. Ron Hubbard. So when Ron finally inverted, if you didn't accept what he said, you were going to end up eventually being kicked out, expelled, declared a suppressive person, and so forth. But the initial Ron was all about, if it isn't true for you, it isn't true. I expect you to be enough of a scientist to look into the things that you've been fed from the time you were that big and find out if any of them have any value at all in your thinking. Or are they just sitting there as fixed pieces of information that bear no factual, won't stand up to any verification. Just take the promises of presidents if you think I'm kidding. All right, thank you for listening. I hope to come back another day and do a lot better than I have today, but I like to think that I can somewhat admire my performance, if nothing else. And I hope you'll check out everything I had to say and make sure I'm also not feeding you a crock of you-know-what. Okay? A million thanks to Tatiana, and goodbye.